Welcome to The Explainer. I'm your host, and today, well, we're putting on our medical detective hats. We're going to deconstruct two incredibly common, yet honestly deeply misunderstood issues: chronic flatulence and severe abdominal distension. If you've ever felt like your gut is just this impossible mystery you can't solve, stick around. We're breaking down the exact mechanical and chemical causes step by step. So, tell me if this sounds familiar. Does your stomach start out perfectly flat when you wake up, but then it swells up so much by the evening that you genuinely look pregnant? It's a remarkably common symptom, and yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. But to permanently solve this, we gotta look at how these symptoms actually manifest. We need to ask ourselves a crucial question. Is your primary problem the sheer volume of trapped gas, or is it a strong, distinct odor? Pinpointing whether it's volume or smell, that's our very first clue, because each one points to a completely different root cause. Okay, let's dive into this. 99%. Just think about that. It's a staggering statistic. Statistically, 99% of internal gastrointestinal gas is completely odorless, no smell at all. It's mostly just harmless elements, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, and methane. So if you're dealing with massive bloating but absolutely no smell, you're dealing with this 99%. It's pure volume driven by an overproduction of these basic gases. But what if odor is the issue? Well, that awful smell comes entirely from the remaining 1%. And that tiny 1% is driven by volatile sulfur compounds. When we detect these sulfur compounds, it is a massive clinical clue. It tells us structurally that your digestion is breaking down mechanically right from the very top of your digestive system. It's leading to putrefaction instead of healthy processing. To understand that breakdown, we really need to see the healthy baseline first. Think of your digestive tract as a cascade. Step 1 is the stomach. Now, this needs to be a highly acidic environment, literally like battery acid, with an ideal pH of 1.0 to 3.0. This extreme acid is what denatures proteins and neutralizes invading pathogens. Then, step 2 is the small intestine, which actually should have a very low microbial density. It's meant to be a mostly sterile environment so you can enzymatically extract nutrients. And finally, step 3 is the colon. This one is packed with microbes for the healthy fermentation of fibers. But what happens when this perfect 3-step cascade fails?
Section 1. Systemic breakdowns, SIBO and SIFO.
When the system breaks down, microbes from the colon migrate upwards into that sterile small intestine. This creates specific clinical syndromes that directly cause that painful distension and trapped gas. Now, what's really interesting here is the difference between the two. On the left, we have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. When bacteria migrate up, they prematurely encounter undigested food and start fermenting dietary fibers. But on the right, we have SIFO, small intestinal fungal overgrowth. This typically involves fungal organisms from the Candida family. These yeasts behave entirely differently. They aggressively feed on dietary sugars and refined starches. When Candida ferments these sugars right there in your small intestine, it produces an immense volume of gas, and that leads directly to that pregnant-looking bloated belly. And this brings us to a fascinating yet completely maddening situation I like to call the health food paradox. Check this out. Healthy dietary fibers, raw salads, and even traditional probiotics actually act as direct fuel for misplaced bacteria? No way, right? But it's true. If you have SIBO or SIFO, eating a giant raw kale salad or drinking a probiotic kombucha won't make you feel better. It will trigger agonizing pain and rapid fermentation super high up in your digestive tract. The food itself is healthy, sure, but its location in your compromised system is entirely wrong. Let's look at exactly what foods trigger this and overload our digestive capacity. First up, high FODMAP plants, things like broccoli, cabbage, and garlic. They contain complex oligosaccharides that require specialized microbial enzymes to break down. Then we have fructose and lactose, which often hit roadblocks just due to natural human enzyme deficiencies. And look at sugar alcohols, like the xylitol you see in a lot of keto products. They are structurally resistant to human enzymes, meaning they travel completely intact directly to those internal microbes, causing explosive gas. And finally, gluten, which is just an incredibly resilient protein matrix that is inherently difficult for the human tract to break down in the first place. Section 2. The odor culprit, protein putrefaction. Okay, so we've solved the mystery of gas volume, but what about that awful 1%? It all comes back to this absolutely critical number, pH 1.0 to 3.0. Your stomach must maintain this extreme acidity to activate an enzyme called pepsin. If your stomach acid is too weak, it simply cannot break down complex muscle meats into amino acids. So instead of being absorbed, this undigested protein mass passes poorly into the small intestine. And because meat contains sulfur-rich amino acids, the bacteria basically begin to putrefy it rather than digest it. This protein putrefaction is the exact mechanical cause of that highly malodorous sulfurous gas. Section 3. The mastermind. Upstream causes. So as medical detectives, we really have to ask the ultimate question. What on earth is destroying our stomach acid in the first place? Well, here are the masterminds behind the breakdown. First off, chronic antacid and proton pump inhibitor use. These medications are clinically intended for short-term use. We're talking maybe under 8 weeks. Yet people take them for decades. This entirely suppresses the body's primary acid production and destroys its natural antimicrobial barrier. Then we have antibiotic overuse. Sure, it clears out harmful bacteria, but it also wipes out your protective strains. This creates an ecosystem void where resilient fungi can just rapidly overgrow. And this brilliantly illustrates another massive upstream cause we often just ignore: autonomic stress. Chronic psychological stress literally shifts your nervous system out of its parasympathetic, or rest and digest state. If you are chronically anxious or stressed, your brain flips a physical switch that directly halts stomach acid production. Your digestive cascade is literally stopped dead in its tracks before the food even hits your stomach. Section 4. Step-by-step restoration protocol. Now that we've identified the criminals, how do we actually fix the system? First, we have to fix the nutrient deficiencies. Your stomach lining physically cannot manufacture hydrochloric acid out of thin air. It requires specific raw materials. You must provide your body with sufficient zinc, vitamin B12, sodium, and potassium. Because without supplementing or absorbing these specific building blocks, your stomach simply cannot restore its natural, highly acidic environment, no matter how stress-free you are. Next, we need a tactical intervention to clear out the overgrowth. Remember how SIBO and SIFO thrive on plant carbohydrates and sugars? Well, a temporary carnivore protocol, meaning a zero-carb, meat-only diet, acts as an incredible short-term tool. By completely eliminating all plant carbohydrates, you effectively starve the candida and bacteria that are fueling the excessive fermentation high up in your digestive tract. This brings rapid, much-needed relief to that painful distension. So, the crucial point here is that you have a concrete, actionable plan. Your gut restoration strategy is pretty straightforward. First, strategically eliminate high FODMAP foods like garlic, onions, and legumes that overload your enzymes. Cut out those sugar alcohols and resilient gluten matrices. Implement that temporary low fermentation diet, like the zero-carb approach we just discussed, to really starve out those misplaced microbes. And simultaneously, choose foods and supplement the missing minerals needed to rebuild your natural acid barrier. You can totally take control of this process. I'll leave you with this one final thought to mull over. Are your healthy habits actually feeling your digestive distress? Seriously, if you're constantly bloated after eating healthy salads or taking probiotics, your system is practically screaming that the structural mechanics are broken. Rebuilding your acid and starving the overgrowth is the logical path back to health. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gives you the structural understanding you need to take control of your digestion starting today.